Welcome back. Mega corporation Apple has announced that it plans to scan photos and messages of all its iPhone and iPad users. CEO Tim Cook announced the initiative as part of its plan to reduce the spread of child sexual abuse material. But yesterday, a group of over 90 civil, human and digital rights groups wrote to the company urging them to consider the potentially disastrous consequences of such technology going unchecked. Alistair Fairweather is the founder of Plainspeak, and he joins us now to discuss this. Alistair, what are the disastrous consequences that these groups are referring to? Because on the surface, trying to stop people having child abuse and sexual images on their phones seems like a good idea.
Yes, I mean it is. It's an interesting. It's right on the boundary of a number of conditions and a number of issues that are assailing the world at the same time right now. So, if you put a backdoor into a device and into an operating system, which is what they're essentially advocating, what they're going to be doing. And a backdoor is a way for any entity, including the maker of the software themselves, to access that software, functions of that software remotely. That backdoor is then there forever, essentially, until you remove it. And even after you've removed it, sometimes it can still be abused. So Apple have reassured everyone that the way that they've implemented it makes it very difficult for, say, a dictatorship to get control of that same mechanism, and or hackers to crowbar the way in that way. And their tech is quite convincing the way that they have designed it, but privacy advocates are privacy advocates because they exist to warn us about dangers, and these are real dangers. It is a trade-off. There's no simple answer here. I mean, the sort of headline of they're going to scan all our photos and find everyone's nude photos is sort of oversimplifying. I'm not saying, and you're not saying that, but it's also oversimplifying it, saying that Apple have got this under control and there's no way this could ever be abused. We have to kind of make a choice as a society about where the boundary is between our privacy and harm to children, because that's really what this is about.
So Alistair, you're saying it's a good idea to try and stamp out the child and sex abuse images on people's phones, and I think we all agree on that. But what you're saying is the implementation of this software, this technology, could be misused in the wrong hands.
Yes.
So really, just dumb it down to us. How does this technology work exactly, and how do you think it might be compromised?
Sure. So there's two main aspects. It's obviously very complex, but I'm going to dumb it right down. The first is that they are going to scan actively on the device the exchange over Messenger of images that are flagged as child porn, and I'll explain that in a second. Or CSAM is what it's now called, child sexual abuse material, between minors and anyone else. So that's number one, the building into Messenger. Number two is that they're going to scan libraries, people's libraries. Now, in both of those cases, what they're doing is they're using what's called a hash library. Now, in English, that means they have, from authorities that combat CSAM, they have a long list of fingerprints. I mean, we're talking billions and billions of fingerprints of images which are recognized as CSAM images, actual what we used to call child porn. And so what they do is that they allow they give all of the devices, essentially a download to all of these devices, this library of fingerprints. And then anytime a photo is sent or stored, they check against the fingerprints, is this a known CSAM image? Now, what is concerning the privacy folks is two things. One, they must be able to remotely update that database of fingerprints. Number two, the people involved in giving them those fingerprints are either governmental or quasi-governmental entities. Right. Therefore, you now have a way, in theory, for governments to put into all iPhones a database of fingerprints of images that will then have Apple warn that government that this specific person with this specific iPhone has shared this specific image.
Right.
Now, the privacy folks are worried that the fingerprints don't have to be child porn, essentially. They don't have to be CSAM. It could be a dissident, as an example. That's the kind of the worst case scenario, would be that say, the likes of China use it to find people who are hiding from them.
Right. Alistair, that actually makes a lot of sense, and thank you so much for explaining that to us. It is, I guess, a good idea in principle, but it is open to abuse. Alistair Fairweather joining us there, talking about the idea that Apple will scan people's devices for CSAM images.